people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. It is Sunday, June 8th, and we have a lot to get to because a lot has taken place over the past 28 hours or so. So make sure you guys like the stream down below. We already have 232 viewers in chat. We have 70 likes. You guys know the drill. The face cam goes on at 100 likes. Make sure you guys like the stream. Subscribe if you're new. We had one super chat from last stream that came in right after the curtains closed. I'd like to get to that one first before we start this stream. And that was from Olivia Williams for 5, saying on Trump's side regarding the Elon beef, but isn't it on him a little for having someone so mentally unstable in his inner circle? Well, I think Elon is always been a give and take. I think it's a net positive that he was able to help during the election. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that in the super chats I see already. We'll get to some of those later because I look at the super chats from this stream. I see Elon. Elon hasn't even been a main focus thanks to California over the past couple of days or so. But we will be talking about this because Trump is actually really just going out and going all out on making sure that, it always comes down to I guess you would say what I'm trying to get through, and I'll put the face cam on as well as we're doing this, is when you kind of let something go in a way, or I don't want to say make a full-on mistake because I understand the context of it. But when you make a mistake or you have questions, could I have done this? Could I have done that? Those are the things that keep you up at night. Now, Donald Trump is somebody who publicly doesn't really like to show weakness because strong people typically don't. But in regards to like the riots of 2020, there were a lot of question marks. Could he have tried a little bit harder to go out and put down the riots? What would the public reception be? You could make the case that at the time they would have tried to strike him down via the courts. They would have tried to impeach him in the middle of 2020. It would have been a big mess for sure, regardless of what he would do. It was a tough situation, but you always have those question marks. Should I have done this? Should I have done that? A lot of people have them. I can't imagine Trump doesn't. But you don't have to worry about that now because whether you want to say the culture's changed, whether you want to say the zeitgeist is completely changed, and instead of veering off to the left, it's stabilizing in common sense, it's stabilizing on the right. He's making sure that he can use power to his advantage and to put down these riots, and this is his signature issue of immigration. It's been for almost 10 years a signature issue. People don't exactly typically remember the day he came down the escalator, but it was June 16th, 2 days after his 69th birthday, June 16th, 2016, or 2015, I should say, for his 2016 presidential campaign. It's been almost 10 years, 10 years from a week from tomorrow, I should say. And this has been going on for a while. And you have these riots break out because Stephen Miller, he's just laying down the hammer. He's coming out and saying, nope, Trump was elected for illegal immigration, illegal aliens to be deported from this country. If they're here illegally, they're going back. We don't even know the number. Some people say it's like 30 million. I don't think it's that high because that would mean like 1 in every 10 people walking down the street happens to be an illegal alien. But the number's way too high. If it was 1 million, it would be way too high. It's probably somewhere in the 10 to 20 million range, probably half of which came here over the past 5 years or so. And then people are acting like, oh, well, the economy's going to collapse if you deport these people. The economy was good 5 years ago. The economy is shit right now. It's getting a little bit better, but it's not very good. And it's not because of Trump that it's not very good. It's because of the past 4 years. The average person is not seeing the returns. Under Trump, at least it's starting to reverse. You're starting to see people self-deport. And who's getting the jobs? The native-born Americans. Once again, I don't understand how you would have a country where the native-born American job numbers would drop, but you see the foreign-born workers' job numbers rise. And it wasn't about retirement and the population pyramid and all these copes. I said it wasn't, and it wasn't. It was because of the fact that you had people that were being disaffected, dropping out of the workforce. And even if it is a little bit because people are retiring or whatever, it's not enough to explain it. You should not have that level. And now you're seeing people drop out of the workforce. Yeah, the economy was good under Biden by the numbers because the numbers were full of illegal aliens. That's why. And the inflation, it doesn't even take into account inflation, by the way, which has become a major problem. And obviously, the only way we're really going to mitigate that is by boosting wages, which, by the way, the wage numbers in the most recent report for the month of May were way up compared to expectations even, which already were going up. But the expectations were beaten significantly. You had the biggest 4-month increase in years, probably since Trump was last president, come to think of it. So out of the gate, you have that. But you have these illegal aliens, they're here. And then you have riots. You have riots breaking out. These are police cars that are on fire in Los Angeles. You should not have any instance of this happening in any first world country, but it is happening in this country. You have people flying Mexican flags, and they claim that the problem is because people are going to be going back to Mexico. A lot of these people aren't even Mexican, by the way. They're Salvadorian, they're Honduran, they're Nicaraguan. They're, in many cases, not even from Central America. You have people that have come in through the southern border from Haiti. You have people that have come in from the Middle East. You know, Hamas is in Mexico because of that. You know, people said that that was crazy talk from Trump. No, he's right. He's technically right. You have these terrorist sleeper cells south of the border because they understand it's so porous. People from all over the world are going to come and they're going to cross the border illegally. And that's exactly what they've been doing for quite some time. And it's become a major, major problem. And now you have people doing something about it, and you have people freaking out. And it's like, you have these rioters, these illegal aliens. Why doesn't ICE just come and like deport these people? You need to deploy all the people you can to deport the people, the illegal aliens in California. They're a sanctuary state or whatever. Cut their funding off completely. Do what you got to do. These people in California, it hurts Californians. The average Californian is hurting because of this. And, you know, it just, the common sense is out the window. These people have entered the country illegally. They're not here legally, and they're protesting, holding the flag of the country they don't want to be deported back to. That's very, very interesting. These people are unhinged. These people are treasonous. How much did we hear about January 6th was the worst thing ever? January 6th is the worst thing ever, they said. But when it comes down to an actual like treasonous, because this is treason. The whole concept of the people gathering for 1/6 is to stand with Donald Trump. You had some people that got into the Capitol building, some of which were let in by some very, suspected Fed people. You have the Riots and all that, but that's not exactly the point. The point is you have a largely, hundreds of thousands of people, largely peaceful. You have a very slim percentage of those people who were tried, in many cases unfairly. They trumped up the charges, no pun intended. It was not a very good use of the justice system. But these people, according to those same people that said this was the hill to die on, 1/6 democracy, it doesn't matter. Democracy is completely fine with flooding the country with tens of millions of people from all over the world illegally. We don't know who they are. They want them voting. They want them to get amnesty for one reason or another, because it's not about democracy is the code word. Democracy doesn't really exist in practice. It's about the oligarchy. It's about protecting the system. These people prop up the system. They've bought out both, parties in terms of the lobby, not the illegals themselves. But you have the left. They want the power. They want the votes. You have the right. They want these donors on the right. At least they used to donate to the right. Maybe not so much anymore because Trump has changed the party. But it was all about cheap labor. That's what they wanted. They wanted cheap labor, the corporations, the corporate donors, a lot of them. And now the entire vibe has shifted, and you have an actual president now who wants to get rid of these people. And these people are going out there and they are acting a fool. They are protesting and rioting. They say protest in many cases. It's not a riot, it's a protest. These things are on fire. If there's fire, it's not a peaceful protest at that point. I mean, we have so many more videos. This is probably one of the more tamer ones, but you have plenty of protesters getting into it with the agents. You had bullets that were flying. I don't know if these were actual bullets or rubber bullets, but either way, you had a little bit of gas. And this is what you have to do. If you have people who are just terrorizing the peace in one way or another, whether it's a full-on riot where the whole city's flaming, like it's Minnesota in 2020, which they also said was not a riot. Remember, they had the fiery but peaceful protests on their graphic, while there were literally buildings burning in the background. And I think that was actually in Kenosha, but you had the summer of 2020, all this stuff, swept it under the rug because, oh no, 1-6 is the real problem. They're not even going to be able to use that anymore after today because they were just waiting for a riot to use. And unlike 2020 and those riots in the summer, you have a National Guard who is actively trying to put them out because the entire mood of the country has changed. Trump isn't trying to play to both sides because there's an election coming up or whatever. No, this is not 2020. This is 2025. This is Trump 2.0. This is the final form. You have ICE fighting back. You have the National Guard fighting back. And you have all these treasonous losers. I don't know what percentage of them are actual citizens, what percentage of them are illegal aliens. I assume a lot of them are illegal aliens. They need to find these people and just deport them to whatever country of origin. I know a lot of them are flying the Mexican flag, but how many of them actually are Mexican is another question. Probably not that many of them. Many of them could be paid operatives to fly certain flags from some far-left organization. But it's much deeper than just Mexico, or maybe they're just like La Raza types that are there. It doesn't really matter. A lot of these people that have come in illegally are not actually from the country of Mexico. They're from Guatemala. They're from all these other places. They actually, in many cases, entered Mexico illegally on their way up to enter the United States. And it's like, do we ever have these protests in Mexico? Could you imagine it? No, because they get shut down. But then you have people like Gavin Newsom, this guy, this loser, this sociopath right here. Donald Trump is right. He said if officials stand in the way of law and order, they will face charges, which is true, whether it's Gavin Newsom or not. And then you have this clown saying, inciting and provoking violence, creating mass chaos, militarizing cities, and arresting opponents. These are the acts of a dictator, not a president, says Gavin Newsom. Here's the problem with that. Let's go through these four things. Inciting or provoking violence. Who incited the violence? Okay, you can't say the United States following the law by carrying through something they're supposed to do, which is deport illegal aliens, people who are not in the country illegally. If you want to say, oh, the ICE raids are provoking the violence, the illegals provoked it by entering the country illegally in the first place, Gavin, okay? Let's get that through your hair and your thick skull, because that is just ridiculous, saying, oh, it's Trump is inciting the violence. No, the one inciting the violence, if anything, you want to draw it back to the root cause, the illegal aliens for crossing the border, because there wouldn't even need to be ICE in the first place. But the riots are actually what are inciting more people to be militarized, which he says in point 3, militarizing cities. So the problem is not Trump. The problem is illegal immigration and people acting a total clown, acting a fool, which is playing into number 2, mass chaos. These people are rioting over what? You're here illegally, you're going back. This was a campaign promise. Trump is fulfilling it. And can we get to number 4? Really? Gavin, arresting opponents. That is not exactly a road these people want to go down, because we lived through the past few years. Donald Trump was indicted 4 times. He was technically arrested. He had a mugshot taken in Atlanta. The notion that arresting opponents is a Donald Trump problem, given the past 4 years, is absolutely ridiculous. The fact they would even dare to have the balls to go down that road is laughable. But it doesn't stick because we understand what has happened the past 4 years. The American people aren't stupid, but they see your party, and your party's done nothing but defend these clowns. And then you have even Kansas governor, you're supposed to be this moderate, signing onto this Democrat governor's statement saying Trump's move to deploy the National Guard is an alarming abuse of power. Governors and the federal government activating them in their own borders without consulting or working. You know what? Screw this. How many people died because he last time around, and I'm not saying it's his fault, but when you try to work within the system, it will bite you it'll just bite you back. We saw it with Minnesota. We saw it with a lot of places in 2020. Trump tried to work with Tim Walz. It was not exactly the best look. It wasn't the best look. And we saw what happened in Minnesota. It took days to actually put this out. So it's good that he's going behind their back because they're not going to do their job properly. It's about keeping the peace, doing what's popular. That's popular. And talk about democracy. No, democracy goes out the window when Trump wins the popular vote. Now it's about, I don't even know what it's about. They'll probably find some other crazy term to use because they've run out of terms because they don't even have the upper hand there. So what is it going to be now? Either way, they say threatening to send in the Marines to neighborhoods undermines the mission of our service members. No, it doesn't. That's what they're supposed to do. You want them to be overseas shooting a bunch of brown people. That's what you want. But when it comes down to protecting the American people at home, no, that's to bridge too far. No, we have to send them to fight. These people, if they had their way, they'd be fighting in Ukraine. They'd be fighting a war with Iran. They'd be fighting all sorts of wars for other countries, not our interests, whatever. But when it comes down to protecting our cities, that's a bridge too far for the military. That's a bridge too far for public trust. Really? That's the bridge too far? It's ridiculous. And then they're basically coming out and saying, like, this is a problem. We stand with Newsom. But if we're going to be honest here, can we just please pray that they impeach Donald Trump over this? Can we pray that the House Democrats raise a resolution and they unanimously vote on it? Because that's the fastest way to ensure that the Republicans are going to win the House in 2026. Can we just, for a moment, just say that we want them to impeach Trump over this because it makes him look good? These are people siding with criminals. You have Kamala Harris, the disgraced Kamala Harris. We don't know what she's going to do, run for governor, run for president. It doesn't matter. She's going to underperform regardless of what she does, and she could cost the Democrats their House majority in the process. And she goes on to say, Los Angeles is my home. She didn't type this. She's too drunk. And like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we're seeing, which, by the way, I thought San Francisco was her home. Now it's LA. Maybe she lives there now. That's not the point. But she goes on to say, in addition to the recent raids in Southern California and across our nation, it's part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division. It's not division. It's common sense. You have people that have entered your country illegally. Kamala, can we, like, all viewers of the live chat, let's check our viewer count. How many people do we have here? We'll check because it's important. 635 people. Can we all come over to your house illegally? Can we enter your door illegally? Can we enter your neighborhood illegally and just, like, stand on the street and congregate? No, of course not. It would not be acceptable. But why are these people allowed to do this in the neighborhoods of the American people, entering illegally on American soil? It's a problem. These people should not be here. They did not come through a legal process. We could talk about reforming the legal process because I think that we have too many people coming in that way, to be honest. But regardless, these people are still breaking the law. Everyone is a criminal, many of whom are criminals past the point of the initial criminality of entering the country illegally. And a lot of the crime that they commit goes unreported too because they commit crime on other illegals. So it kind of gets, it doesn't get counted in the data properly, one would assume. But then they go on to say that the administration's actions are not about public safety, stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. They're being deported. There is a process of deportation. These people, there was no due process for them entering America. Why should there be a due process focus right now? Why should there be a focus on due process? Why in the world are they so obsessed with clinging to these like boomercon principles all of a sudden from like 20 or 30 years ago? Due process, which I support. I'm not saying I don't support due process, but the problem is that you don't care about due process when it came to them entering the country. Why should we care about due process when due process wasn't written for these people in the first place? Kamala, that's a very important question. Also, she goes on to say, our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. Even if that's true and the protests have been majority peaceful, you won't say that with 1/6. The call doesn't go the other way. So I don't care. You write the rules, you live by them, you die by them, Kamala. You die by them, even though you didn't write the rules because you are not mentally capable of writing the rules. You have Biden's mental capacity and you're not like, on the verge of collapse like he is. So it is what it is. But then she goes on to say, I continue to support the millions of Americans who are standing. I don't think those are Americans. And they're not flying the American flag. Even if they are born here, some of them might be like La Raza types that are American citizens, Mexican nationals or who are supporting the Mexican nationals or other Central Americans. These people are not exactly American by the definition that it would take for one to be an American. Now, there's plenty. I'm not talking about the community as a whole. I mean, there's plenty of. I mean, you saw what Hispanic Americans did in the recent election. There's plenty of them that are supporting deportations and fed up with this, and that's a whole nother topic we might get to because, I mean, you have this notion of this is a bad look for the Hispanic vote, and it's like, yeah, for the Democrats that they're supporting these people. I mean, Donald Trump ran a borderline like nativist campaign. I don't use that term pejoratively, but basically it was a campaign that was for people who cared about our national sovereignty. It didn't really matter what they were, but it said, you have these people coming in. We're going to remain a first world country, reject third world mass migration, many of which is illegal. That was a cornerstone in Trump's campaign, mass deportations. More so than anything else. It's honestly like he didn't even talk about anything else, and it won him the election in part. I mean, there's many factors, it's true, but the number one thing that lit a fire under a lot of people, in my opinion, was not even inflation or the economy. If that was the case, you would have seen a lot more victories in 2022 when inflation was at 9%. What you did see was, the economy was sluggish, and it tied in directly to immigration, by the way. In fact, a lot of the gains in the economy we're seeing are job transfers from illegal aliens and other foreign workers to native-born Americans. Hispanic voters are, by and large, American. The higher turnout rates are of those who are assimilated. And these people are in opposition to illegal immigration because they don't want these people in their communities either, and they're largely in their communities, by the way, and they largely cause havoc, and it's a major problem, and they take government benefits that would otherwise go to Hispanics. They take all sorts of resources away. That's a major issue for a lot of Hispanic Americans, and that's partially why Donald Trump did historically well. He set a record. This guy comes down the escalator. They say, he can't win the Hispanic vote. You got to go with Jeb. Yeah, how did that work out? I mean, George Bush in 2004 got probably, some of the exit polls say 40. He probably got like 38% of the Hispanic vote. And a big portion of that was because his brother was governor of Florida and he was governor of Texas, and that carried the weight. And California wasn't as blue back then. So that's partially why he was able to do respectably well. He got in the mid to high 30s. Yeah, he probably got like 38. That was like the record. Trump won Hispanic men outright. He didn't win them because they elected him thinking that he's not going to deport people. Like we see the PSYOP running from some people. They say, he was only supposed to deport criminals. He never said that. He never said that at all. Besides, they're all criminals. Yes, you crossed illegally, you're a criminal. The people that are voting based on that, we're always voting Democrat. There's a big share of the Hispanic electorate that will vote based on that, and they're voting Democrat almost invariably. So that's the way it is. You'll even have some people that'll get the wrong takeaways from the upcoming midterm when, Hispanics don't vote as Republican as they did in 2024. And it's actually going to be about turnout. And then people are going to take this and say, the GOP needs to cave on, like these people don't understand basic electoral politics. And it's really frustrating as somebody who does. because they never listen to people like me. And I think that they should, given the past few years. And, we had the midterms and was a little bit wrong. But if you look at why we were a little bit bullish and why it didn't actually transpire, I think the autopsy report was proven about, I guess you would say, around 8 o'clock at election night, if not even sooner, with the early vote data that we got. So regardless, the bottom line remains that you have these people that don't get it on the left and the right. I mean, there's plenty of people, plenty of cowards on the right. Trump's approval rating is relatively stable. That much is true. But you have Gavin Newsom out here, Kamala Harris, and they're just all taking the bait. And by the way, it turns out that the guy from, he didn't get due process. Turns out he has some alleged sex crimes as well in the mix. And I don't need to get too much into that on this stream, but it's like the people the Democrats have died on the Hill defending are the worst people. Trump is very lucky in a way because he has the worst enemies. He has the worst enemies in the GOP. He has the worst enemies on the left. And it's glorious to watch him fall and take the bait every single time. Just take the layup, put out the riots. You actually might gain support. But no, they have to, they can't get rid of the wokeness drug. They think it's helping them. We saw this in 2024 down the stretch. Even when they tried to appeal to men, it lost them men. When they tried to appeal to Hispanics, it lost them Hispanics. The more they talk, the more these people talk, the more support they lose. And this is why this party has an approval rating that's like 35% on a good day. On a bad day, it's like 20, depending on the poll. But the bottom line is you don't have a high approval rating. You could win as many special elections as you want. Have them all. We don't care. Obviously, we do. But, the main point is that come an actual election, a big boy election, even a midterm election, to a large degree, you're not going to win. Guess what's in California? Like 6 House seats that Donald Trump won or Steve Garvey won that the Democrats in the House managed to get by, some of which was a little suspect. But come 2026, I think that there's definitely some room for Republicans to grow. And the way the left acts like this, it's going to turn off a lot of people, especially actual citizens, people that are Americans, not people who are illegally here waving Mexican flags and whining about the prospect of being deported and sent back to Mexico. It's ridiculous, these people. It's treason. You want to talk about 1-6 and treason? That's all they said. It's treason because, Trump didn't, like they say, he didn't do enough. But he tried to have the National Guard there. They said no. Now he wants to send the National Guard in. Now he's the problem because of who's protesting and why they're protesting. It's all, we know these people, how they operate. But the longer they act like this, the more people they're turning off because it's like an 80-20 issue at this point. Deport these people here illegally. Deporting the criminals is one thing. That's more like 90-10. Maybe the actual, deport every illegal still at 60-40. But it's becoming an 80-20 issue, and it's becoming a majority position even among Hispanic American voters. But they have a problem when it comes down to these actual pushbacks from Trump, because Trump is actually a strong leader. And we need strong leadership in this country, especially because the country's so broken. And, you could say, they always like to say, dictator or fascist, whatever. It's like, that just is, it's code word for effectiveness at this point, because those words are meaningless. They don't know a thing or two about Mussolini and his, ideology and his pamphlets of what he supported. They don't know any of that. These people are clowns. They don't know their head from their ass, many of them. But they'll use these buzzwords, and really what it is, it's like, this guy's actually is putting his thumb on the scale. I can't handle it. Yeah, because you're too used to weak, pussy Republicans that can't get the job done. That's why they like these people. Donald Trump probably has more in common on certain issues with your average liberal from 2000, foreign policy, and health is a big one now with the Maha, but you have plenty of other issues that he aligned. Trade is another one. But now that, these people know, they love the Cheneys. They love the Cheneys. They love the Bushes. It's a bizarre realignment that we have. It really is. It's a bizarre realignment, but it makes politics interesting, and we like that on this channel. So we're going to get to the super chats after a quick water break, because we have to. We have to get to all of them. We got a lot of them. By the way, we have a goal. 15 super chats, yellow or above, guys. We are 4 out of 15. Hopefully we could hit it. If not, that's fine, but let's get closer. Let's get closer, as close as we possibly can. We'll start off with Johnny Heartdog. Who else? For 5, saying, question, do you think the Trump-Musk feud was staged? A lot of people are saying that, but I think it's a bit of a stretch. Well, I appreciate the super chat, but I don't think it was staged. I think Musk is going through a tough time. He's got issues with, alleged issues with ketamine and all these things. And Trump is kind of taking the high road. If it was staged, I think Trump would probably fire off a few bangers. And I mean like actual, like full-on bangers on Truth Social. Give him a nickname like Mediocre Musk or something like that. I don't know. But I don't think it was staged, but I do think there's potential for reconciliation between those two. It's not an issue that I care a ridiculous amount about. I would like to have Elon Musk on our side, but if it's between those two, anyone siding with Musk on the bill, I feel like doesn't fully understand the bill. And I understand why people might say, this is too much pork or the bill's not perfect. But what I don't understand are people that say, no, it's worth throwing away supporting Trump over the bill, when the bill, in reality, what it does, and Stephen Miller's done a phenomenal job of breaking this down, it kind of showcases, the fact that the bill actually does pay for itself compared to the current baseline, and it has a lot of potential to bring in even more revenue that people don't understand. So Johnny Heartdog, again for 20, says, I've been staying awake, I assume you mean away from the news lately, so this is the first I heard of the riots. Maybe Californians will wake up now. No, I don't see it happening. All I can say is I support Trump's decision. Well, Trump did the right thing by sending in the National Guard, and that's a huge thing. When it came down to Minnesota, they sided with the rioters for some reason. California, it's cocked, we know, but at the same time, there's something to the fact that there are a lot of people fed up, and as long as people can stay on our side politically engaged, that's going to help us in 26. Also, Johnny for 5 says, I'm hearing people say Kash Patel has been lying to and betraying Trump and isn't really with us. I suspect people saying that don't have all the facts. Yeah, they're upset because Epstein's list is not released yet, and I'm not even entirely sure it exists. And then you have Dan Bongino, who came out and said that he doesn't believe that Epstein's list is real, and he thinks that there's been evidence destroyed. And I think it's fair. Obviously, I'd like to have it, but I think we have a good idea of who probably was on it anyways. Marilyn Degatti 83 says, should we worry about Elon's new party? I don't believe we should. Elon is somebody who is all talk, no action when it comes down to these things, and he'll tweet something and he'll not always follow up on it. So I'm not worried about Elon Musk and whatever mythical party he wants to concoct. So it'll never happen. There's no appetite for a centrist party that has zero shot to win. We understand that. You have what did they do? No labels? How did that work out? Didn't work out too well. Olivia Williams says, Sears reminds me of Kamala Harris. Lieutenant governor is like the VP. Well, I disagree, because Youngkin is actually good as a governor, and Biden is not good as a president. So I do think she's weak. I don't think the comparison is 1-to-1, though. Art Pollard for 5 says, they tell you what Heemeyer did was wrong and the LA riots are okay. Wake up, it's about control. If you're referencing the LA riots from the 90s, I'm not entirely, I was a little bit before my time, but I get what you're saying. XJ Cherokee Bear for 3 says, let's see what Liz Cheney has to say. Crickets, oh, of course not. Absolutely not. She'll probably say something about 1-6 being better. Or she'll say 1-6 was a bigger riot. not a better riot. She obviously thinks this one is completely justifiable. Wildman says the long D of justice has just beginning. MAGA, thank you, Wildman, for the wild super chat. American Nerd 1776 for 5 says, given what is happening in California as well as other Democrat-controlled states and cities, can and should Trump declare martial? Well, I mean, this is kind of martial law. It's not martial law in the constitutional sense, but I think if this spirals out of control, people are going to make the case that he can escalate, and he should escalate if it spirals out of control. Punishment needs to fit the crime. If you have these people causing havoc in cities, well, you're going to need pushback. It's common sense. Riley Moore for 5 says Trump should declare martial law in the blue states, the blue cities. And well, if they don't comply after a certain period of time, he may have no choice. And people will say, well, this is going to hurt the election. We don't have to worry about that. If these people stay here and get citizenship, you're not winning elections anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, let's be honest. Sean Jaramillo says Jeff Collier for Kansas governor. He was governor once. He could be governor again. We'll see what happens. Silver Fox Smith for 2. Thank you. American Nerd 1776 for 10. Says Gavin Newsom is still desperately trying to stay relevant for the 28 election while ignoring the actual problems of his state and complaining about federal overreach, how pathetic and disgusting. I agree 100%. He's a sociopath. He will try to get people to believe, no, I support border security and men shouldn't play women's sports. When it comes to crunch time, he's awful on everything. He turns. He will fail to explain his way out of the paper bag. He lost a debate to Ron DeSantis, who, whether people can like his tenure as governor or not, he has the charisma of like a brick, and Newsom lost that debate to him. I mean, could you imagine how he's going to do? But, Democrats are very impressionable people. They are. These are not these people, they like to talk about themselves being the educated party when in reality they tend to lack a lot of basic political acumen despite it. I mean, it's literally the like IQ meme come to life with a left side and the right side, the lows and the highs. Those are the people who get it, whether it's on instinct or whether it's mentally or both. And then you have the people in the middle that are just like, I watch CNN, so I'm smart. It's like, congratulations. No, you're not. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says Newsom was absolutely right. Inciting violence, creating chaos, and arresting opponents are acts of a dictator, which proves he's a dictator, speaking of Newsom and Biden. Yeah, it's not really going to stick. He's trying to arrest his political opponents. Where have I heard that before? Did Trump not run on retribution and win? Because I also missed that part when that didn't happen. He won the popular vote. Talk about democracy. Christian says, if Harris had won, what do you think the country would look like at this point? Well, I mean, I don't want to think about that, but it would not look good. I think that you wouldn't have these types of things happening, but it's necessary for things to get done and for the nation to heal. You probably would be a big mess. Tucson Paleocon for 10 says, think this could get as bad as the Rodney King LA riots in 92. But like I said, a little bit before my time, but I think you could make the case that if it continues, yeah, but I mean, 92 was much more notable. It does seem like the National Guard did a lot to squash a lot of things going on today. Doesn't mean it's still not going on, but it's also the weekend. We'll see what happens tomorrow if they continue. I mean, a lot of these people are unemployed. I mean, that goes without saying. But American Nerd 1776 for 10 says all the Dems who claim Trump is a dictator for deploying the National Guard to LA have clearly ignored or forgotten that the Insurrection Act and U.S. Code 10 says he as president can do that. Exactly. Like, he has the right to protect his people. And from what I understand, like, they got mad when he tweeted that quote out about who saves his country does not violate any law. But he's technically right, because you have a problem with an overrun country of illegal aliens. And in order to actually save your nation, you're going to have to deport these people by any means necessary, because if there's no border, there is no nation. It's just a line on a map that can be crossed at any time. It's basically relegated to like a state line. And that's not exactly, Texas is great, but it's not a nation. And, well, it was at one point, but that's not the point. But he has to save his country, and you have to, even if he has to bend the law to do it, I don't think a majority would care. I don't think they would. You could say, well, they should, but that's not the point. We've seen the law bent many, many times on the other side, and we've seen the Constitution and its original intent been abused by a supposed 6-3 conservative court gone rogue. It's honestly at a point where do we even want Alito and Thomas to retire, or do we want them to just live another 20 years if they can, because the replacements will even see if they can hold up, because even the Trump appointees were not exactly up to standard, up to par. Roku Fan 1835 says Laura Kelly's a cancer to Kansas. Well, she'll be gone soon regardless, so we can live with that. Politics Today for 5 says, do you think that one of the reasons why Dem voters love rhinos so much is that news like Meet the Press shows Rand Paul bitching about the BBB? Well, Rand Paul, we can get into the BBB more if you guys want to, but I do think that it is like these people are beloved. The Pauls and the Masseys are, whether you think they're doing it on principle or not, I think that there's a little bit of a mix of donor influence. By the way, Massey's always like, I don't take money, but it's like at the end of the day, you get it from somewhere, and you're operating under the guise of what the left would like you to do. The left would like you to be a thorn in Trump's side. The left would like you to promote write-in votes against Donald Trump. The left would like you, in the case of Rand Paul, to not endorse Donald Trump in a very consequential election. These people, whether you agree with them on a lot of things or not, what they are doing in effect is operating like opposition. And that's what Donald Trump is getting at when he's attacking people like Massey. And he's not wrong, because he doesn't understand politics, A, or B, he's willing to let his so-called principles, they're not even principles, they're principles. The principles get the best of him, and that's not a very, very good thing. In my opinion, it's not very good. So, yeah, the left does like those people, to answer your question. So Jacob Hawley for 20 says Trump didn't even invoke the Insurrection Act. The act is Title 10, U.S. Code 251 to 255. Trump invoked Title 10 Code 332 and 12406. Dems say Trump can't do this without a governor. Eisenhower must have broken the law then. Well, if there's precedence for it, there's precedence for it. The bottom line is that if you have an issue and the governor is not willing to act in a reasonable fashion, you should have the right to send in the National Guard to said states to make sure that the law is enforced. That's important, in my opinion. I wish Trump would have done that in 2020 regarding the Minneapolis, or maybe not, because I like where we're at right now. I really do. The story arc, I'm all here for it. But it depends on what happens in the next 4 years. But I'm very hopeful seeing what's going on. You have Donald Trump. He's just sitting there at the UFC fight last night, probably just, texting some of his advisors what to do. And, it was just an insane protest last night. And it's like, yeah, we need people to be tough on crime. You need to make sure these people don't do this, whether it means the police have to, get into it or not, because these people are protesting on behalf of criminals, all of them, because they are illegal, people that are not American who broke the law to stay in this country. How is that treason more so than my guy didn't get a fair shake in 2020, I'm going to go protest, which I understand why people can say that they think 1-6 went too far in some capacity. But, at least you could say the intent behind the initial protest in Donald Trump's speech, where he said peaceful and patriotic, etc., was, I didn't get a fair shake. I'll be back. We got to make sure this doesn't happen again. That was kind of the main takeaway. Whereas now you have, no, let these people stay. Let me stay in this country illegally. Don't kick me out to the country that I'm waving the flag of. That's more treason. That's going to rub the average American the wrong way, especially because this is ongoing. It's right now If you think Democrats are going to be able to run on 1/6 anymore after 2024, you're out of your mind. Whereas Republicans still have the capability to run in the midterms on the border because A, you're making progress. It's not like you're not fixing the problem. I think that there can be more to be done. I think everybody agrees that there's more to be done. But B, you have the optics thing going for it. You're being tough. You're doing something. You're showing you're doing something. And C, these protests, and you're putting them out, but it shows, and you make the left defend these people. You make them defend all the worst people in existence. That's a victory. That's what you got to do if you want to go out there and perform well in 2026. That's the difference between having the House and not having the House. When the margin is super tight in either chamber, it's super tight. So let's see. We have more super chats. Tyler Gruder says, do you think independent voters will be turned off by this and vote against Trump in 26? No, not because of this. If they vote blue in 26, I think a lot of it's going to be turnout. I don't think the national environment has changed much, period, since 2024. Now, you could say that Democrats are going to be more fired up, and they're the type to vote in midterms more so than your average Republican, and the independents that will show up are going to be more naturally inclined to align themselves with the Democrats, of course. I'm not saying that that's not going to be the case. I'm not promising a red wave. I'm just promising not a blue wave on the scale of 2018, because mathematically it's not going to happen. And you have Trump more popular now, which could change. You could get more popular, you could get less, stay the same. But he's more popular now than he was at any point during his first term, both in terms of personal favorability and approval rating. So when you combine those two things together, traditionally it would have you believe that we're going to be in for some sort of midterm year that's going to be beneficial. Let's see. But it's like you have people that are they panic about everything and they're wrong. There's issues you can go hard to the right on, and there's issues that you can't. I think like abortion is one where, whether it's moral or not moral, as a position to take, you can't come out here and talk about banning abortion in a state that is, even remotely close to a toss-up state. Maybe Alabama. I assume it probably is banned in Alabama. There's going to be some states where it's banned and the public is content with that. And then there's going to be plenty of states, even states like Iowa, Missouri, Ohio, that are red, but they're not exactly, for one reason or another, going to support a ban. And certain rhetoric is not going to be helpful. And that's not an issue people should focus on in those states. But when it comes down to immigration, even in like New York, it's a winning issue to deport these people. Even in like, Illinois, Chicago, all across the country, it's a winning issue. So, when it comes down to something like that, that's a little bit deeper. It's a little bit different. This is not an issue that's going to impact Republicans in the midterms negatively. If they deport everybody, that'd be a promise kept. If anything, that's something to run on that will fire up the Republican base, the Democrat base of who? Illegals? People that always vote in every election? Like, you have to fire up your base to win, and obviously win as much of a share of the independents as possible. We need to run solid candidates, people that know how to win, people that understand politics, people that aren't going to be frozen out by donors, some of which are getting screwed by the system, but it's the system. So we have a lot to do on that front. But you have to be able to get the base out to vote if you want to win in 26. So that's it. Let's see. Ash K2 says it's shameful Trump is deporting Arias Cristobal. Okay. She's been here since a child, also someone's future wife. Well, she's here illegally. That's the problem. I mean, you find somebody here that's been here for a long time. The entire family's here illegally. It's not, her fault, no, but the fault of her family, yes, and that's the main takeaway. So, you can't exactly have this, you got to look at this objectively. You have people that are here, whether they're brought here when they're younger, whether they're not. It's in many cases, it's unfortunate. There's more sympathy for those people But at the end of the day, it's a problem. If I'm going to prioritize the deportations, those people probably would be the last. But at the same time, you can't throw out the entire law because, somebody's crying. Yeah, we've seen that meme before. It's just not the point. I haven't even heard of this. I think I know what case you're talking about. I haven't even heard of this person's name before until you put it in chat. So, there's plenty of people that are here illegally, and I think that's a problem. I mean, we talk about this person. Let's talk about college students in Georgia. What happened to Laken Riley? Oh, she's killed by an illegal. This goes both ways. I'm not saying that this woman would have killed somebody, but could a member of her family that was here illegally done so and we didn't know who they were? Absolutely. I mean, it's a problem. You talk about these people. Why don't we talk about Laken Riley and all these people that have been killed over the years, Kate Steinle? I mean, there's so many names. You could list all of them, but they've been killed by illegal aliens. Those people, those people don't get a second chance to enter this country. The lady that you mentioned probably will have a second chance, for better or worse. The other people will not. They will never get to be somebody's wife because they were killed and murdered. And I think that's the main takeaway that we should be having here, not these sob stories about people who were unfortunately caught up in legal drama because their family decided to break the law 20 years ago. Hayden Akers says, are there any consequences that come out of this? Oh, depend. That's a loaded question. I can't answer it because it's too loaded. It's a loaded question. David Maddox for 5 says, great stream, Red Eagle. MAGA, 100% for Trump and his action in L.A. Back the blue and the National Guard. Down with Gavin Newsom. Thank you for that. David, Die for Oil for 20 says, do you think this bill is getting passed? Do you think this bill getting passed will increase deportations? What do you think about the current numbers? I think that the trajectory is where we want it to be. Are the numbers where we want it to be? That's a different story. But like I said, we're 4 months into this presidency, and now we're on pace to deport. If the current daily average keeps up of thousands per day, we would be on pace to deport 4+ million throughout the term, if not more than that. In fact, that doesn't include self-deportations, which, looking at the jobs numbers, would kind of tell us that there's probably hundreds of thousands. And that doesn't even talk about the temporary protected status being canceled for the Haitians in Springfield and Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and all those other towns. So a little bit of a mixed bag there. But I do think that the numbers are where we would like them to be, given the big picture. I think we can do more. I think it will increase deportations because it funds. And that's the thing. Everyone's talking about the big, beautiful bill's a problem because it happens to increase spending and they think it's going to run up the debt and deficit, which a lot of those are liberal smears that are ignoring data that should be directly in these people's faces, but they decide to ignore it. And I'm not a fan of everything it does. I don't think we need to add the SALT deductions back, at least not at that level. I know why Trump wants to do it. I think he could do it in a more tame manner, or at least set them to expire sooner than later. But regardless, it is what it is. You have this bill that is not perfect, but very, very solid. 95% solid plus. And these people decide to say it's going to run up the debt and deficit. Let's say they're right. Okay, but the bill also decides to give us enough funding to enact the promised mass deportations and build the border wall. So if we do both of those things and the economy happens to get worse for some reason, even though it's going to probably get better, at least we'll have a country. At least you could have a country with an economy that's mediocre. You can have a country, but when it comes down to the alternative, you have nothing. You're going to get your debt ceiling raised, Rand and Thomas. You're going to have that happen anyways. And it's going to be with Chuck Schumer, probably in a bill that requires 60 votes with a bunch of uniparty pork. And if Trump doesn't sign it, it's going to be overridden. And if he does sign it, you're going to be yelling at him, calling him some sort of like fake conservative or something, just like you did with the Rescue Act back in 2020. So these people are a problem. They're a problem. Let's see. John Waffle H2P for 5 says Trump needs to go after fortune companies hiring illegals. They should. If Biden could do it with the DEI, Trump could do the inverse regarding DEI, regarding the illegals. I agree. He should. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get a national E-Verify, but that would be massive. Riley Moore says, did they send the military to LA? They sent in the National Guard. Also, Riley says, I live in Charleroi, tired of the hate. Yeah, there's a lot of Haitians, a lot of migrants. It's a problem. I mean, these people get dumped there, and, it's not a, culturally compatible demographic to rural Pennsylvania when you're dumping thousands of people in a town that only has, a few thousand. I don't even know the population size, but you're overrunning these towns is the main takeaway, and they're fed up. It's why Springfield voted Republican for the first time in decades. It's why Clark County, Ohio itself was the furthest right-moving county in the state of Ohio. And it's a great thing this was brought to the attention of many great people during the campaign trail, because it was a major problem. And we're right. We were proven right. These people were fed up. The election results showed it. You could talk about all these claims from citizens, whether you think they're true, whether you think they're false. I think some of them are true. At least. It would make sense. We saw footage of migrants carrying ducks, and people reporting that their pets have gone missing for one reason or another. And you have these countries where it's a common occurrence there. They have their own culture. They do that there. It's fine. But then if you dump these people here, and you really think there's not going to be one instance, a single instance of it happening, is a bridge too far. When these people are just magically living in a different country, it's not entirely how this thing works. This isn't like one person who, legally immigrates in a limited number, who happens to add value to the United States and goes through the process the way that we're all told how immigration typically works, even though that's not typically how it works, at least not every time. We've had many people since Art Seller, good chunk of which are great people and contribute to our society and, vote the right way and, are not causing problems in Los Angeles, but you have a lot of people who are. And this is the problem when you have mass migration. If we had limited numbers like we did either pre-Hart Seller or whatever, it'd be a different story. But we don't have that. We have a broken system. We need to lower it across the board. Charlie Kirk put a poll out on his Twitter, which basically is going to get the whole Republican base involved, like has 1 million plus votes. I'd say it's representative of the MAGA base, at least at a minimum, and it shows that over 90% want an immigration full moratorium, net zero, which means you're going to have some, because you have a couple 100,000 people leave every year. You'll have people in for those people, selectively speaking, and it would be beneficial overall if we did that, cut the number down to net zero, a moratorium per se, and it's overwhelmingly popular. Maybe we should poll that in our next national poll whenever we decide to conduct one. I know it's the off season, but maybe sometime in August or September. So John Waffle H2P for 5 says, do you think anchor babies should be deported? I'm tired of hearing the stories about how they're entitled to full citizenship. Well, if they're born here, they're born here. It's going to be tough. I think the solution is to get rid of birthright citizenship. And if these people are like newborns, they should be deported with their families, because it would make sense. Do you want your baby to become like an orphan in the United States? Or would you rather they go back home with you when you basically just brought your wife or girlfriend or whoever you had the baby with, the mother, the father, over into the United States for the purpose of, achieving citizenship? So the anchor baby thing needs to stop. Birthright citizenship should be gone. Many countries don't have it. The 14th Amendment was not written for illegal aliens. It was written for freed slaves. And for some reason, we tend to forget why it was written. And that's what the Constitution should really be operating under. If it's to be a living document, should be based on what the intent was. And the intent of the 14th Amendment had nothing to do with anchor babies. I don't even think the term anchor baby was a thing for over 100 years after it was written. or sometime around there. Clay Franklin for 10 says, why do riots happen in the summer and not any other season? Probably because it's just when people are going to be out. I mean, do you want to riot in the cold? I mean, you want to riot in the rainy spring? Like, of course they're going to riot in the summer, but I mean, it's happened other times of year, I'm sure. But I mean, it would make sense why the summer would be the hot season for that kind of stuff, unless there's some big political event that happens. I mean, the Democrats rioted. We always hear about 1/6, but why not talk about the 2016 riots in the fall for the Trump victory, or the riots that took place before the inauguration in 2017. That was in the D.C. January cold, so it's not like it only happens in the summer, but it would make sense. Do you want to go out there and riot? And, I guess if you look at a place like Arizona, you probably wouldn't see much rioting in Phoenix in the summer because people don't want to go out because it's too hot. So it's largely just a weather thing. American Nerd 1776 says Trump should send in the Army and Marines as well. Well, as much backup as they need. I mean, we should be, instead of stationing the Army to protect Europe because, they have to pay for their health care, so we have to defend Sweden. We have to defend Germany. We have to defend all these places. I'm not saying we can't have bases there. We have just too many bases. Scale back the bases. Why not put our military where we need it? Put it on the southern border. Make sure that we put it in cities where the violence is too high. You got to be more like El Salvador in that regard. They brought down that murder rate from like 50 to 2 instantly. So let's see. Also, American Nerd 76 says LAPD chief, this thing has gotten out of control. It has. It just is going to go in advertisements. That's all it's for. I mean, it's got to go in the advertisements for 2026. You got to squash it. You got to find out who's supporting it on the left. Make sure that those people are never going to see power again, if possible. Obviously, you're not going to win California, most likely. But, if Kamala Harris is the nominee, if we could find some candidate, some serious candidate, I don't know who that would be, to challenge her, could they get 40% of the vote? Absolutely. She's a chronic underperformer. She's awful. She underperformed Biden's 2020 margin against Trump by 10 points. She only won in 2010 because the third parties took votes away from the Republican in California. I mean, she's not a juggernaut candidate. If she goes for governor, she could cost the Democrats the entirety of the midterms. If not, she very well could get the nomination for the presidency again. Because everybody else is a clown, and to be fair, she might lose support in those debates. But yeah, that's just a mess. Speaking of Democrat candidates, Laza92 says, enjoyed your recent Dem tier list video and hope to see similar content down the line. Well, I appreciate that. Also, thank you for calling out Newscomb as the sociopath he is. Yeah, he's not a good sociopath when everybody can tell he's a sociopath. I mean, you have a lot of people that say he's going to be able to, slick back his hair all the way to the White House. I don't see it, honestly. I don't really see it that much. So it's just, I don't know. Ash K2 says, remember when we thought AZ would go to Harris because of some random border mayor endorsed her abortion ballot and McCain? I don't know who thought that. I mean, you had a lot of people that thought that, but it was clear. If that early vote data was way too telling regarding Arizona. This whole McCain Republican phenomenon, they're all over the age of 60. A lot of them already vote. Probably more of them voted for Biden than Harris in reality, for one. For two, Trump is able to tap into the pool of voters that so many other Republicans can't, which come 2026 could be an issue. But I still think Arizona's too far gone for the Dems, and I think it's going to cost Katie Hobbs her job. Now, 2028, 2030, down the line, those are Senate seats that could be up for grabs as well. You'll have to watch out for them. But Tom Otto for 5 says, unfortunately, Patel and Bongino haven't backed up their big talk about holding bad actors accountable. The NGOs and big donors got to get charged. I'd like to see more. I would like to see more. They've done well in regards to some of these people that are currently, I guess you would say, doing things. We saw it with the what do you call it? The whole thing that went down with the judge in Wisconsin. But there's plenty of people that need to be charged. Let's see. We have John Waffle, H2 pieces. Cuban looks like he's getting ready. Yeah, I mean, I regret not including him in the tier list. I probably will include him in the next one, but we'll see, guys. We'll see. We will see. Anyways, we'll wrap it up soon. This will be the last call, and we will wrap it up. So, again, if you guys would like to support the channel, feel free to, at a minimum, like the stream and subscribe. Hit the bell if we have any super chats. And again, make sure you get them in before the curtain closes, because we have so many super chats that will sometimes get behind the curtain. We got one last time. I don't want to have any this time. We could start. I'll probably just start off the next stream with them. Let's see. Matt Gagnon says, "Can you address the thoughts of the?" I don't have any thoughts on that. I mean, I think I'm not trying to put people on blast in the live chat, but certain people are going through certain things, and I guess we'll have no choice but to keep them in our prayers, won't we? American Nerd 1776 says, "In your opinion, what's the worst outcome of this?" Well, the worst outcome would be the riots get out of control and Trump would fail to squash them, which I don't see happening, given the fact that they're complaining that he's sending in the National Guard instead of saying, oh, he's not doing enough. Because that would actually be smart on the part of Democrats, and it would demoralize Trump's base. So I'm not entirely sure what that would be. Definitely, we don't like violence in general. Talking about taking the electoral politics side of things outside of this, but yeah. Someone said in chat the riots hurt Trump. Riots would hurt Trump if he does nothing, and he's not doing nothing. So I don't see that being the case. Otherwise, I don't see them hurting him. Now, 2020 riots didn't help him because he wasn't perceived as doing enough. Some people will say it's not his fault, but regardless, he's making sure that he's doing anything he possibly can, which I think helps. Overall, if they impeached him over this, it would be that'd be the end of any hope for a Democrat House, in my opinion, because you would have all these people that would vote to impeach Trump. You lose any crossover appeal you get at that point. We've seen it time and time again. The turnout for Trump's base, if you're the Democrats, you want it to be a low-key election that most people don't know are happening. If that happens, the Democrats will do just fine. They're not going to have a commanding majority, but they will retake the House and possibly gain 10 to 15 seats. If Trump's base is energized any bit, the House is in play. But if it's very energized, the Democrats have a high floor, but their ceiling is also not that high either because their party's in complete shambles. So we're too far away from that. I think the Democrats probably are going to win the generic ballot popular vote, but I don't think that automatically translates to a House victory. I don't think it would be by much. It was like D+7, D+8 last go around in 2018 during Trump's first term. Now we're looking more at D+1 to 2, with the House seats probably being less aligned with a 3-point shift to the left in the generic ballot, because of the fact that there's going to be so much money spent on these races, and they're going to be, they're going to be a little bit more nationalized, and turnout's going to be a little bit more supercharged. And Trump has raised a lot of money, so it should shape up for an interesting year. Jacob Hawley for 20 says, look up the guy who introduced the amendment. The guy who introduced it even had a speech before the vote and said it wouldn't apply to children born to diplomats, foreign leaders and staff, and illegal immigrants. Interesting. American Nerd 1776 says, will this be a turning point for California with 20? Well, the turning point in California has already happened. The question is, are you going to accelerate its rightward turn? A lot of that has been because of Hispanic voters. You have some people that think this is going to cost Republicans, despite them campaigning on this last time and it being something that is not a third rail among Hispanic voters. And the Democrats can't seem to understand that. Like, could you maybe hit a ceiling? Yeah, but that ceiling is going to be above 50%. People vote largely, pocketbook is number one, but also safety. And when it comes down to safety, they oppose illegal immigration if you're a citizen and you're not some crazy La Raza type, which it's a thing, but it's not as, common as even like BLM is in the black community, etc. So let's see. Sven Olsen says, not to beat a dead horse on CS. I've made my opinion known, but I believe the 13th Amendment provision prohibiting involuntary servitude stops it. What do you define CS? You could just type it in the regular chat. But I feel like I'm missing something here. And this will probably be the final super chat of the night that we will read, unless one comes in like right now. But okay, the 14th Amendment is what Jacob was saying in his super chat. Child support. Okay, thank you. I see that. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Again, though, if we want to apply the same logic, and this is the devil's advocate of it, because I think it is still a broken system to a degree. But still, I think the 13th Amendment original intent, just like the 14th Amendment was not meant to apply to illegal immigration, illegal aliens. The 13th Amendment was for freeing the slaves. It was not about, even in my opinion, prison slavery. So long as people are not being overworked. It's like if people in prison, if they're going to be put to work in some places, some people are not happy about that. I think that so long as they can get a slim portion of whatever profit, if they're to be released, it's not a problem. As for child support, I don't think that would really apply. So I'm not saying that you're not onto something, but it's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know if that would hold up. I am Battlefield for two says, will the LA riots affect the Dems' chances at the midterms? I mean, there's a long way to go, if I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to say that this is going to be the be-all and end-all, but it doesn't help Democrats in California. It definitely doesn't help them. Now, if this is still a thing a year from now and they keep doing this, then we could be talking about it. But either way, I think the fact that Trump's doing something on immigration, he's trying to do something on the economy, he's trying to do something on tariffs, even if the approval on that is a little shaky. He's trying to enact his promises. He's doing everything. He's attempting to do everything he promised. Maybe you could say he hasn't fully done a lot of what he's promised. He's been president for not even 5 months. Is there really a promise that he is actively not keeping, or at least trying to keep? Because that's an important question. And so far, I don't see it. Maybe some people will say, well, what about the spending, which we could have that debate. But as for even when it comes down to things like the Maha stuff, it's like you're not banning seed oils outright, but you have little wins. You got certain food groups stop using certain dyes. He's trying to negotiate lower drug prices. He's trying. That's the thing. At a minimum, he's trying, and it takes time. In 2017, at this point, people weren't seeing every victory, but he was trying, and eventually he led his agenda not to completion, but he got a lot of it done. And the big beautiful bill would have a lot of it done. So let's see. John Waffle says we can't sleep on Cuban. He'd be the Democrat Trump. If he runs, he'd win the primaries. Well, like I said, I don't want to sleep on him. I do think that I think he's boomer bust. I think he's boomer bust. I mean, Democrats, how many of them are going to say he's a rich white millionaire? I mean, that stuff, the whole Bernie wing is not a fan of that stuff. He's a white man who's a millionaire or a billionaire. There's a lot of things that they'll try to use against him. But I will say that he has a lot of upside. I do think he's more likely to get the nomination than Stephen A., and he doesn't have as much woke baggage that he could effectively pivot in a general election. It's not impossible. Did he not also grow up in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state? It's not the be-all and end-all. I mean, Vance has that Rust Belt strength as well. But yeah, I would say Cuban is is a potential wild card, kind of like Wes Moore. I think he's one of their stronger options. And I don't think he's going to be the nominee, but he could be. I mean, it's non-zero chance. So, making sure I get everything. LinnerX52 for 10 says, we'll probably be asleep when you see this, just helping you meet the goal. Go Trump. America says, keep going. Well, appreciate the super chat. We got a couple before the goal started that qualified. We're probably not going to hit that main goal, but that's okay. 15 was maybe a little bit lofty for yellow, which is fine, but I appreciate the super chat. Sven Olsen, so in your opinion, child support is not involuntary servitude. The only provision that enforces it is in punishment of a crime. Involuntary servitude, it's from a legal, wouldn't it be from a legal settlement? So if somebody has a child and then they, illegitimate child, and they decide to not take care of the child, you're saying it would be, involuntary servitude to take care of said child, usually in like some divorce settlement or something of that nature. I mean, I'm not one to believe that we should be having situations where you would have these illegitimate children or high divorce rates or whatever. But realistically speaking, I don't know if that would fly in a court of law to compare that to slavery. I can vaguely understand where you're coming from, but usually it would be from some sort of legal settlement, would it not be? So sometimes I think that the payments would be too much, sometimes maybe even too little, depending on the situation. But I don't think that I don't think I would compare those two completely. A lot of people in chat talking about Fetterman. He'd never get the nomination. He might not even get renominated for Senate in Pennsylvania, let alone win the nomination for president. He might lose. I mean, if they give him the cinema treatment, we probably get another seat up there. We probably get another Senate seat in Pennsylvania, which would be great because we talk about the path to 60. If there is one, we don't want to be too lofty. I might do a video on that this week, but it would have to run through Pennsylvania. It would almost have to. So it's important that we get that if we can get it. So, all right. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. But before we go, like the stream. Let's get to 600, at least on the replay. Subscribe, hit the bell. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.